Yes, I'm Vicky Colbert. I'm from Colombia. I'm director of Fundación Escuela Nueva and co-author of the Escuela Nueva model. The philosophy is not new. It's what we have learned about education and the philosophy of education from more than 100 years ago. It's a little bit of Montessori, a little bit of John Dewey, a little bit of Vygotsky. The philosophy is not new. What is new is that we managed not only to apply it and put it in practice, in action, in the most vulnerable schools of Colombia. But I think the most important part is that we made it easily replicable and scalable. We transformed complexity into simple, manageable action so that any teacher could perform it. I think one of the most important things is that we demonstrated evidence, empirical evidence, so we've maintained the model and it has been sustained after so many years because there has been always empirical and research findings behind. And the second thing is that we made it viable technically speaking, that any teacher could do it without having a PhD. Technically feasible, politically feasible, because we work with unions in Latin America and you have to learn how to work with teachers, and financially feasible. It's cost effective so that we could have big impact at large scale. So I think the strength is not the philosophy as a new philosophy. It's child-centered, participatory learning, and role of the teacher for the 21st century. It has systemic thinking behind, it's cooperative learning. You know, it's all the things that now are supposed to be applied in classrooms. But I think the strength of Escuela Nueva is that it's feasible technically, politically, and financially. One of the beauties is precisely when you don't have sufficient funds, you have to tackle the most crucial aspects of teacher training. So we wanted to focus on attitudinal change. So we had like 3 strategies. One was that teachers could see schools themselves, because in this way we could have a demand-driven approach from the teachers themselves, that they would see a school and they could say, we can do it. The second, because anything that is extra work for teachers will not be easily introduced at large scale. The second dimension that I think was crucial is that we had the teachers trained with the same methodology that they were going to be using with their students. We had to compensate for what teachers' colleges were not doing. They talk about the theory, but then the teachers don't know how to do things when they get into their classrooms and into their schools. So a big contradiction in Latin America is that we have conferences on participatory learning. So these are the contradictions we have at higher education and teachers' colleges. So we train the teachers with the same methodologies. We design the training manuals with the same methodology they would be using with their children, personalized and cooperative learning. And the third thing is not to leave the teachers alone. And this is something that is extremely important. Now teachers learn more through collaborative learning among themselves than from a higher supervisor from the Ministry of Education. So I think these are the 3 dimensions that we've had to change teacher education. We touched the 3 basic elements that change attitudes and behaviors of teachers. Well, the benefits that we've had is not only even though the children we work with come from the most vulnerable backgrounds, we have demonstrated that these children can have higher cognitive outcomes in learning and math. Colombia, when this was implemented at large scale, was the only country in Latin America where rural schools outperform urban children. There have been many studies of how Escuela Nueva compensates for socioeconomic limitations. So I think this is it's the issue of equity, results. But I think one of the most important things is that the self-esteem of children is strengthened, and we've also had outcomes in peaceful resolution of conflicts, in democratic behavior, and learning to live together. I think this is one of the most important aspects. So we have achievements in both cognitive aspects, in social emotional aspects, but also in equity dimensions. Well, we have learned from many mistakes, and I think let's say from a strategic perspective, the model per se has been enriched with new technologies and with virtual resources, But I think the most important aspect is that we have learned from a strategic perspective is that you have to work with governments if you want to have big impact at large scale, if you want to influence policy. So I think Escuela Nueva has one of the most important things is this is why the World Bank selected it as one of the 3 most important experiences in education worldwide, because it has had an impact on policy. But we have learned that you have to work with government, but it's not enough. You have to have public-private partnerships and the role of civil society for 2 key words: quality and sustainability. So I think a lesson learned is you can not only just work with governments. Well, there have been so many countries coming around, from Africa, from Vietnam, from Asia. We're right now working in Zambia, in many countries of Latin America. But I think the future of Escuela Nueva is that also there's interest from developing countries, from the United States, because we just promote good quality learning in a simple way, in a replicable way. And so I think the future of Escuela Nueva, it's way beyond Colombia, and it's going to be a global movement. So this is the way we envision it. Well, yes, of course. I think the most memorable experience was when I met a real teacher in Colombia, Oscar Mogollón. He was just a wonderful teacher, applying many of the experiences of the unitary school promoted by UNESCO worldwide. And he was such a charismatic teacher and such a wonderful, empathetic leader that we worked together, and jointly, he, Beryl Levinger, another colleague of ours, we developed the Escuela Nueva model. And I think what was interesting about Oscar was that he demonstrated that he had the real role of the teacher, which was somebody to be empathetic and full of love and affection for his children. So I think these human characteristics are the most important ones. So together, the 3 of us, we build this experience. It's just fantastic. I think I have to congratulate the organizers, because there's a vision of bringing the best thought leaders, especially in technology and education and in science. And I think we can benefit so much from learning and talking to so many wonderful people that are here. And I think for us it can be a new challenge on how to link with the most strategic experiences that technology has to offer.